Not hearing anything.
This is
WRSV, Elm City.
Turn Up.
Choice FM. The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM. Gailliard Show.
That was my cue. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm hoping it was. This is James Gailliard, and happy Monday, June 3rd. Okay, I guess we're not on yet. I'm going to wait, and y'all cue me when it's time. Okay, now they're telling me it's time. So, a little technical difficulties there. I apologize, everyone. Happy Monday, June 3rd, 2024. This is James Gailliard, and you are listening and or watching the James Gailliard Show right here on Choice FM, 92.1 FM on the dial, the People Station. This is where I talk about stuff that we may not agree with, but hopefully we can talk about some things that's going to make all of our lives a little bit better. And so I want to jump right on in. And, you know, I was determined not to deal with the fact that we have a former president that is a convicted felon. I was convinced, I was determined not to raise it Sunday in the pulpit. And kudos to me, I did not, because I don't use my pulpit for that. But I'm on my radio show right now, and I want to jump right in. I was watching. Y'all know I like Michael Smerconish, right? He has a talk show during the week on POTUS, and then he's on Saturday mornings on CNN, and he was interviewing Charlemagne from the Breakfast Club. And they were referencing some data, and I don't know. I don't trust polls. You know, it's only been recent that I've even been asked to participate in polls. I'm convinced it's probably because I give to political candidates and I'm very active in politics in general. But up until even when I was elected in the General Assembly, people weren't asking me to participate in polls. So whenever I see a poll, the first thing that I always ask myself is, but who did you poll? Because, I mean, I want you to do this. Do this. Humor me. Do this. Check with 5 people you know and ask them when was the last time they participated in a political poll. I'd be curious to know what the people you run with, the people in your profession, the people that are on the assembly line with you, the people that are in the office with you, the people that are at the hospital, school systems with you, ask them. I'm convinced the average person is just not participating in these polls. So I'm always like, well, who are you polling? So here was the poll. The poll is 22% of black people are going to vote for Trump. That is wild to me. I mean, who are you polling? 22%? Like, I don't know that I could find 22, let alone 22%. That is like a really significant number. And I'm going somewhere with this conversation, so I just want to weave this thing in. But, like, are they polling like Mark Robinson and Tim Scott and Candace Owens? Like, what black folk are you voting, are you polling that says 22% of them are going to vote for Trump? And so then I'm listening to, like, Charlemagne's show, The Breakfast Club, and, like, people are calling in, and, like, some crazy, crazy stuff was being said. And you know, I want to have a bigger part of a conversation about this, because having a former president who can run for office as a convicted felon, when here in North Carolina felons can't even vote, really points to something that is really wrong with our criminal justice system, just on a federal level and even on a state level, because obviously it changes from state to state, and it gets really quirky about where are my federal rights versus where are my state rights? You know, so I want to know from you, my audience, what does the next president, what does the next governor have to do to earn your vote in November of 2024? I was hearing some things that were just very disgruntling to me. And so I want to go through a couple of the data points because, you know, on this show, we really set emotion aside. That's why I think some people have a hard time listening and or watching, because we just insist on embedding our emotion in much of the issues that we're dealing with. And I want to try to extract as much of the emotion from the conversation and just lay out data points. That's it. Just lay out data points. And I'm going to do that throughout the show today, particularly as it relates to criminal justice, because many of the callers that were calling in to Charlamagne's show, the Breakfast Club, was saying, well, I can identify, like, I don't trust the criminal justice system. And so if he got convicted in a system that I don't trust, he must be kind of one of us now. And let me just kill that demon. Listen, Donald Trump is not one of you, okay, brother, that got, unjustly convicted or that got incarcerated for an inordinate amount of time compared to other people that are not your race or age. He is just a spoiled, wealthy person that has been cheating his way to the top like lots of American business people have and just got caught. Now, I know now that's already offensive. Let me be really clear. I'm not saying that people that get to the top always are cheating. But I want you to understand that the system that America was built upon. I mean, America was built. When you start looking at land grants that came out of England, land grants that came out of Spain, through Texas and Florida, other places throughout the country, I mean, millions and millions of acres were literally given away to people, right? And then when those areas officially became U.S. territories, then the United States accepted the ownerships of those properties to the people that England or Spain or whoever had granted land rights to, land that they had stolen to begin with. That's a whole nother conversation. And so those individuals then are gifted land. I want you to hear me. Gifted land. They then enslave millions of people of color, black people from Africa, and they place them on their land to work their land for free for 400 years. I want you to understand the history of wealth building in our nation. And so I give you land. You work that land for 400 years. You have someone or someone's families work that land for 400 years for free. And then you gain wealth as a result of that. And I'm supposed to say that you are a legitimate businessman. I don't think so. That's Donald Trump in essence, right? Family business given to you. And then by not paying subcontractors, other groups of people, you build about this great wealth. And then somebody finally decides, you know what, your business practices are just flat out wrong and illegal. And so we're going to sue you. And then they wind up winning. He winds up guilty. A unanimous jury, by the way, found him guilty on all 34 counts. I want you to hear this. Of falsifying business records, right? It is a cover-up scheme, right? So I'm using business money for unscrupulous, immoral, illegal purposes, but I'm claiming it as a legitimate business expense. And so he gets convicted now on these 34 counts. This is our former president, who's president from January 2017 to January 2021, right? He's right now the presumptive Republican nominee against Democratic President Joe Biden. And now the whole question of the nation is, how does this 34 count conviction affect the presidential race? How is it going to affect how you vote? But the thing that's crazy for me is that he can still run for president, right? And so he's going to wind up being sentenced like 4 days before the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee happens. And at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, 4 days after the July 11th sentencing, it is likely that he will be the formal nominee for the presidential candidate for Republicans in the United States, right? And so this really raises things for me. So I want to explain what this is really at stake. And in the midst of all of this, all these polls are being taken, and the polls are quite interesting. And the polls claim 22%, as I said. Yeah, I don't think so. 22% of black people are going to vote for Trump because they have this understanding of kind of what it means to be a victim of the criminal justice system. Y'all, he is not a political prisoner. Y'all, he is not some person that the justice system got wrong because he was a person of color, because he was poor. Yeah, this is a former president, wealthy man who got caught cheating. Okay, period. And so we begin looking at the vast numbers of things that are wrong with our criminal justice system. That's really the issues that I want to raise. And so, you know, what does this mean? I think what's first interesting is that he can still run for office even though he's convicted. This really raises massive concerns for me. As a matter of fact, I don't even know for real that I care. Let me process this a little bit. Y'all can process it with me. Like, I believe in second chances. Like, I believe that our criminal justice system should be redemptive. I believe it should be restorative. And so I don't really know that I've got issues that a convicted felon can run for president of the United States. I don't really know that I care about that. I think I care more that there are places where convicted felons can't even vote. So I think we don't get to do one or the other. I think it's got to be a both-and scenario. If a convicted felon gets to be president of the United or gets to run for president, then we also need to have an environment where convicted felons have their rights restored to vote. I want to talk a little bit about this. So this is what the U.S. Constitution says. Let me just educate us a little bit, and I'm going to try to get to some really meaty stuff but I want to educate us first. So the U.S. Constitution says that voters should basically be able to choose who represents them. So that's the whole reason behind there's nothing that says a criminal can't run, because basically it's saying voters should decide who represents them. This is where I think Republicans ought to wake up to. I think Republicans, and for white or black, and for these supposed 22% of black people, largely Democrats who are going to vote for them, this is, I think, the question. The question for me becomes, does this human being really represent you? A person that cheats themselves to the top, do they represent you? A person that is immoral in their business practices, do they represent you? A person that has no regard. I know I was listening to another talk show. I love these talk shows, and they were like, well, what has Biden done for black people? Are you kidding me? When you begin looking at the record of the Biden presidency around the United States, I mean, just student loan debt cancellation and how it's helped an entire middle class. When you start looking at infrastructure projects, roads and bridges, when you start looking at here in North Carolina, the passage of Medicaid expansion, when you start looking at all of these programs that have significant impact, I am so tired of people with the propaganda. That's what I'm going to call it. And this is what I mean by the propaganda. What did we just pass? July 4th? Memorial Day. So I'm thinking about our East City campus for July 4th. That's what I was thinking. So this past Memorial Day, can we let these headphones be thinking caps, okay? Let's just say, can you get one of these? Everybody get a thinking cap. Y'all remember them thinking caps when we were in school? Get a thinking cap. They say the economy is tanking, right? That's what people are saying. But then Memorial Day weekend, more people traveled than ever in the history of America. Clearly, people are not broke. When you begin looking at all of the data, when you start looking at retail sales, people are always on the road. I was flying recently, went to Nashville, planes packed out, plane packed out. You know, and so I think this narrative of, oh my God, the economy is doing so poorly under Joe Biden, where is the evidence of that? People are living better than ever before. There are issues, let me be very clear. I want to address those issues. But back to Trump and him running for president. So the Constitution says you should decide who represents you. The issue for me is, does a human being that demoralizes women, should he represent you? Should a human being that is, and here's the issue for me about convicted felonies. Does a human being that's a convicted felon that shows no sign of repentance or remorse, does he represent you? Does a person that makes a demagogue of themselves, do they represent you? Does a person that belittles the Bible represent you? So the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution says that I should be able to, in essence, choose who represents me. And basically the qualifications for that is that I need to be a natural-born citizen. And I need to be 35 years old by Inauguration Day, which means I could technically run at 34. And I need to have been a resident of the United States for 14 years. That's it, y'all. So the bottom line, and let's just deal with this. So I want us to get over the whole can convicted felons run for president kind of conversation. I want us to get over that. First of all, because when you hear that, it does not come from a space of research. It doesn't come from a space of knowledge. It doesn't come from a space of data. So I don't want us getting pulled into the lesser issues at hand. Here's the bottom line. Our current government, our Constitution, the general statutes allow for this man to run for president. Get over that. As a matter of fact, Lyndon LaRouche got convicted in 1988 of tax and mail fraud conspiracy. He ran for president. He ran several times between 1976 and 2004. Eugene Debs, convicted of violating the Espionage Act in 1917, which he got convicted of violating the Espionage Act because of an anti-war speech, and then he ran for president under a Socialist Party banner in 1920. So though there are few and far between examples, the reality of it is, convicted felons get to run for president. Here are the deeper issues for me that should make us want to work harder, that should make us want to do things different, that should make us want to engage in politics. Remember, on the James Gailliard Show, and if you're just tuning in or watching, this is Choice 92 FM, 92.1 FM. I'm James Gailliard. This is the James Gailliard Show. I'm talking about the conviction of former President Donald Trump and the larger implications of it, because I want us to be knowledgeable and educated. So let's talk. So we've clarified the fact that, yes, he does get the right to vote, and we're going to stop making much of that because that's just the Constitution. So stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. It is such a sophomoric argument. It's done. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to the more significant issues. One of the more significant issues is, does that convicted felon retain or do they lose their right to vote? For Donald Trump, it is very unlikely that he loses his right to vote. So when people say, well, how can you even run for an office and you can't even vote for that office? It is very unlikely he is going to lose his ability to vote for himself. So let's walk through why this is. Donald Trump is registered to vote in Florida, right? Palm Beach County specifically. He got convicted in New York, right? So he's registered to vote in Florida. Now, if you and I were to go, again, this is about data, y'all. It's not about our emotions. If we were to go to the website, Florida Department of State, this is what it says. I'm reading from it directly. A felony conviction in another state. So this is another state because he's convicted in New York. A felony conviction in another state makes a person ineligible to vote. Let me finish. Ineligible to vote in Florida only if the conviction would make the person ineligible to vote in the state where the person was convicted. Got it? So, basically, this is what Florida law says. If you get convicted somewhere else, we are going to use the law of that somewhere else and apply it to Florida. So then the question becomes, what's New York law? New York law, and this was interesting because this was not long ago passed in 2021, it's ironic that what's saving his butt is the state that he hates. It's so crazy to me. All of these Democratic, progressive, far left, what they would consider Democratic, progressive, far left, extreme criminal justice laws that they hate so much, they're the very things that's going to enable him to vote. It's so crazy. So this is the New York law that's passed in 2021. The New York law that's passed in 2021, it says it will restore your voting rights for people that are convicted of felonies upon their release from prison. So voters do not lose their right to vote unless they are in prison serving a sentence for a felony conviction. So people whose prison sentences are stayed pending an appeal do not lose their right to a vote in New York, which means even though he's definitely going to appeal, and because he's going to appeal, he's not going to go to prison. And I don't think he would go to prison anyway. I mean, I think there's a lot of arguments, and maybe we can do that on another show. Should he or should he not go to prison? But what I want us to see is that there are deeper implications, and I want us to see how it's important understanding the matters of our local constitution and our general statutes, how much they play pivotal roles in our lives. And so what becomes interesting is that North Carolina looks so different. So this is interesting. Had he been tried in North Carolina and found guilty, he would have lost his right to vote. And I do think, y'all, that there are certain laws and certain rules that should not change statewide. There's certain things that should just be the same at the federal level. So in North Carolina, once a person is convicted of a felony, they lose their right to vote. And they lose their right to vote until they have completed their sentence. Now, I understand not retaining your right to vote while you're in prison. I think the moment you do your time, the moment I've done enough time to be released and I'm returning into society and I'm making an effort to be a regular, ongoing, contributing member of society, I should regain that right. I mean, think about it like this. What happened to our belief that if there's taxation, there should be representation? How crazy is that? I go to jail in North Carolina. I get convicted of something. So I go to jail. I go to jail. I pay my time. I come out. I get a job. When I get that job, they start taking tax out of my paycheck. But yet I still can't vote because I be on post-release supervision. I'm going to be on some parole associated with my felony sentence, or I may be on just probation. But I'm working and paying taxes, but I can't vote. So you get my taxes, but I can't get representation. Do you see the contradiction of that? And these are things that impact sons, dads, parents, people that we love, cousins. Just if none of that, how about human beings that matter? Y'all, this is James Gailliard. You are watching or listening to James Gailliard's show. I'm going to find out what all of you are talking about when I take this commercial break. Then I'm going to come right back and keep talking a little bit about Donald Trump and then I got a special guest that I'm going to share with you. But let me pay some bills. I'll be right back.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
Pop's Diner, 132 South Church Street, Rocky Mount. Juicy burger, hot, delicious wing, yummy spaghetti, and the first pizza to ever be served downtown Rocky Mount. Hot, delicious pizza and more at Pop's Diner. Pop's Diner for hot dogs. Pop's Diner for lunch. Open daily from 11 till 7 p.m. City workers get the Pop's hookup. Pop's Diner, open from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Wings, pizza, burgers, spaghetti, salads, and more. Hot, fresh, and fast at Pop's downtown Rocky Mount. Open 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday.
Get ready to feel the vibes and groove to the rhythm at the One Love Reggae Concert, Saturday, June 22nd at the Edna Boykin Cultural Center, 108 Nash Street, Wilson. It's going to be an unforgettable night filled with music, culture, and unity. Don't miss out on the chance to witness international reggae sensation Zion Albert as he takes the stage and sets it on fire with his electrifying performance and leading us through the night with his infectious energy. Our MC, the one and only Big Gailliard. Get ready to groove Groove from the start with the soulful sounds of our opening act, Rasmedi. Tickets are available now for just $25 at Say Yum Jamaican Restaurant. Hurry, because they're selling fast. And for those last-minute decision makers, tickets will be available at the door for $30. This event is proudly sponsored by Say Yum Jamaican Restaurant. Don't miss the One Love Reggae Concert, where music unites us all. See you there. For more information, visit Say Yum Jamaican Restaurant or check us out online. One Love Reggae Concert, June 22nd, Edna Boykin Cultural Center,
108 East Nash Street in Wilson. This is Damon Doc Johnson of Choice FM 92.1, and I have a question for you. Have you recently been injured in a car accident, trucking accident, motorcycle accident, or a Lyft or Uber accident? Then you need to call the Jackson Law Center. They're trusted and recommended. AC Jackson of the Jackson Law Center is always there to help you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Call the Jackson Law Center at 919-719-2742. That's 919-719-2742. For wrongful death, hit and run, pedestrian accidents, call AC Jackson at the Jackson Law Center, 919-719-2742. That's 919-719-2742. Or go to www.jacksonlawcenter.com. Jackson Law Center provides representation for personal injury, accidents, wrongful death, traffic citations, license restoration, and criminal defense. Call 919-719-2742. That's 919-719-2742. Or go to www.jacksonlawcenter.com.
James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm glad you are here. This is James Gailliard, and welcome back to the James Gailliard Show. If my engineer could help me, you have a whole lot of commercials in my ear right now, so if you could get those out, I could concentrate a little bit on what I'm saying. I appreciate that so much. So, guys, this is James Gailliard. Welcome back to the James Gailliard Show. I've been talking about Donald Trump. I've got a whole lot of feedback, studio engineer. If you can help me here. I'm listening to some commercial about an Uber accident or something. So, back, y'all, and I want to keep talking about Donald Trump, and I want to educate us on the deeper things, the bigger things about the conviction. I do want to comment, though, on Melissa. She says, I don't agree that the economy is good because of the housing market and the rental prices and the price of everything we pay for. Melissa, I couldn't agree with you more. I think we are still suffering from some serious supply chain issues. I think we're also suffering from some really poor international trade agreements, and we're suffering from a lack of a workforce, right? And so I agree. When I say that the economy is booming, I'm telling you, I'm simply saying it from a perspective that people are out there. A lot of people are spending a lot of money, and we're not certainly in a depressive state. But I agree that there are a lot of things relative to our economy that are going to need to get better. And so I appreciate that feedback. I see some other comments here. I want to let me just keep walking through this issue about the conviction of the former president, kind of what it means as we move forward. And so the issue becomes, let's talk about North Carolina. Here in North Carolina, you get convicted and you lose your right to vote, right? Until you've completed your sentence. The issue of completing your sentence includes any aspect of the sentence, not just being in prison or jail. It also means any period of probation, any post-release supervision, any parole associated, right? Here's the issue. Once a person's period of supervision is over, a person convicted of a felony will automatically regain the right to vote. They got to register to vote, even if they were previously registered to vote. But here's the issue. Sometimes having financial debt associated with the felony sentence, fines, fees, restitution, in some situations, it can extend their probation. So I wind up, my probation could be over, but I'm still on probation because of financial matters. It's not that it's like I'm having a hard time making the restitution. I'm not making enough money. Whatever the case is, I'm not suggesting that the people should not pay. This is what I'm suggesting. That if two people are convicted of the exact same crime and they both get equal sentences, we already know that's not going to happen if one's black and one's white, but I'm going to go with that for just a moment. They're convicted of equal sentences. They both get released, but one comes from a wealthy family, one comes from a really poor family. Maybe they're second or third generation incarcerated. that wealthy person has a better opportunity and greater likelihood, their family that is, to support them in helping them make their restitution. If they're able to make their restitution, they're able to vote. If the poor person cannot make their restitution, then that has the potential of extending their probationary period. If it extends their probationary period under North Carolina law, they're not able to vote. What does that mean, family? Let's put our thinking caps on, right? It means that I am losing rights of citizenship because of finances. I'm losing rights of citizenship because of poverty. I'm losing rights of citizenship over dollars. That is significantly not just. And so I think for me, the issue of Donald Trump points to greater issues with our criminal justice system. That I don't want us bogged down on the lesser arguments on should a felon be able to run for president. I don't want us bogged down on the lesser issues of, I want us thinking about, look, the Constitution says he can run. I prove that to you. The deeper issues are there are some elements of inequity and injustice embedded in our system that need to be addressed. And these are the reasons we vote. So let me give you a couple. Paternal incarceration. Paternal incarceration. That means daddy, right? Paternal. Dad is in jail. Dad got in jail. If a little white boy grows up with a home and his dad is in jail, that becomes the baseline, right? Now let's say the same 7-year-old, you got a 7-year-old little white boy, 7-year-old little black boy. Each of them have an incarcerated father. The data says the little black boy is 7.5 times more likely himself to go to prison. So this is why I want us thinking about the broader implications of criminal justice. Don't get caught up on some little thing with Donald Trump. Get caught up on the fact of what the Department of State says in Florida as it relates back to New York and how it will be different in North Carolina. And if it's a little Hispanic 7-year-old boy, he's 2.5 times. So 3 boys grow up who have done nothing wrong. All they did was were born. The black boy is 7.5 times more likely to go to jail. Hispanic boy, 2.5 times more likely to go to jail. These are the issues that have to get tackled with why we need to vote. Let me give you some more data for North Carolina. Black people make up 21% of North Carolina population. 21% of the population. But they account for 52% of everyone in prison. 21% of the population, 52% of everyone that's a prisoner. Of everyone that's going to get at least a 20-year sentence, 20-year sentence, black people, 21% of the population, 56% of the 20-year sentence. Now, let's look the opposite. This is all data. Don't tell me. So this is the problem when Mark Robinson says something like, well, if I get to be lieutenant, if I made it to lieutenant governor, there can't be any racism in America. Bruh, put your thinking cap on. The data says otherwise. So use white people as the opposite example then. Whites make up 62% of the North Carolina population, but they're only 40% of the prisoners. So you can't tell me that they're less criminal. We're human. All of us, put my church hat on for you for a moment. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. We are born in sin and shapen in iniquity. You really think we serve a God who make black people more criminal than white people? You really think we serve a God that God is going to make black people more criminal than white people? That he's going to make white people more just than black? So anyone who tells me that there is no systemic racism in America is really saying that they serve a God who believes that he makes people unequal. Come on, where's your theology? Where's your doctrine on that? So 62% of the population is white, but only 40% of the prisoners are white. And only 36% of those that get a 20-year sentence are white. 56% of the 20-plus year sentences are black, 36%, even though the black population is only a third of the white population. And yet it's almost, not quite double, but it's over 50% more. So the 20-year sentence is 50% more, but we're only a third of the population. Let me really give you one that's going to really make your head spin. And I'm going to take you to my special guest in a minute. But let me give you one more. 80%, because you do know in North Carolina we have juveniles, and I'll have to unpack this at another show. 80% of juveniles that will be serving life without parole. We have juveniles that will serve life without parole. Y'all hearing me? 80% of the juveniles that serve life without parole are black. Let that sink in for a moment. This is about the broader implications of the criminal justice system. When we think about the fact that we have a former president that is a convicted felon, I don't want us focusing so heavily on the fact that he's a felon. We already knew he was dirty. We already knew he was unjust. We already knew that he didn't play fair. We already knew that he broke laws. We already knew all that. The justice system happened to have caught up with him. In doing so, it has done us a favor deeper than him being a convict. It is highlighting its own injustices. It is highlighting its own inequities. And because of that, we have to vote. And so we're going to talk about voting. I had a special opportunity to interview. I want to bring into the studio right now Jamie Harrison. Jamie Harrison is the chair of Democratic National Committee. We had a wonderful time, and we recorded this. I wanted to spend some time sharing with you. Put in your comments as we look at this interview with me and Jamie Harrison, the chair of the Democratic National Committee. Well, everybody, welcome. This is James Gailliard. Welcome to the James Gailliard Show. And as promised, talking politics, culture, religion, all the stuff they tell us not to talk about because we can't afford to educate ourselves and to entertain ourselves into a better life. We got to educate ourselves to a better life. So, in studio, right in Rocky Mount, is the chairman himself, chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Jamie Harrison. Jamie, welcome.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you so much for having me. Really, really excited about being on the show with you and excited about being in North Carolina, which is a battleground state. So folks in North Carolina, you need to understand the power that you have right now to really transform this nation. The eyes of the entire country, no, the eyes of the world are going to be what happens here in North Carolina. So that's a lot of power, y'all. Make sure you use it.
Man, it's a great way to start off. We may have some folk that are not familiar with the Democratic National. Yeah. Tell us who you are.
So I'm the chair of the Democratic National Committee, and some of you may remember my name because I ran for the Senate in South Carolina 4 years ago against Lindsey Graham. I know a lot of North Carolina people sent me contributions and saw my ads. But after I was not successful, but President Biden was successful, he called me the night of the election. And he said, Jamie, I saw your race, and I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the race that you ran. He said, now if, because it wasn't certain yet that he was going to be president. He said, now if the election goes the way that we think is going, I'm going to have a spot for you somewhere, in my team. And so he won. And then shortly thereafter, I get a call that he wanted me to serve as the chair of the Democratic National Committee. And the Democratic National Committee is the organization that's been around for 176 years that oversees the Democratic Party. We got a lot of state parties, North Carolina Democratic Party, South Carolina Democratic Party, and we coordinate with all of those state parties, but we also help to run the presidential elections process. So debates, primaries, and what have you. And so President Biden was the very first president to name a black person to be chair of the DNC. Wow. Now, I'm the third black person to serve as chair of the DNC. They ran in elections when we didn't have a president. Okay. But this is the very first time that a president nominated a black person to run the Democratic National Committee. But, that's who Joe Biden is. First person to put a black woman as vice president of the United States. First person to put a black woman on the United States Supreme Court. Just recently, we just announced that there have been over 200 judges that Joe Biden has appointed. 58 of them have been black. Wow. Right? So this is a man who has seen folks in our community hear about the struggles and the obstacles that we face, and is doing something in order to fundamentally change that. Man,
I'm so glad you raised that. I just finished reading about the appellate courts and the appointments, and it's extraordinary. And what baffles me, Jamie, is I can't recall a president with a more successful term than Joe Biden.
Not in my lifetime.
And so what do we need to do to better communicate? Because you would think his ratings would be 80%.
Yeah.
Right? Because the term has been that good.
It's been that good. I mean, think about the money that is coming here to North Carolina. $9.8 billion in terms of infrastructure into the state of North Carolina. That's roads, bridges, water, broadband. You know, many of our communities have been disconnected from the rest of the world. No broadband. Joe Biden did that. Donald Trump talked about filling the pothole, everything else. He's going to have infrastructure week every week. Never filled the pothole.
Right.
But Joe Biden got that done in the first year. Dropped the cost of insulin down to $35 a month. Money to the historically black colleges and universities. $16 billion. That's with a B, y'all.
Yeah.
$16 billion for HBCUs. We look at the student loan debt up. $137 billion in terms of student loan debt relief for almost 5 million people, many of them black. I mean, listen, I had $160,000 of debt. Now I still paying mine off, but there are a lot of brothers and sisters who've gotten that, who've been paying for over 20 years, and now it was because of Joe Biden, the first president to ever do this, to say, you know what? You paid enough. It's time for you to now move on and do more for your family and your friends and your community. And so it's about getting that information out. We can't trust mainstream media to get it out, to be quite honest, because they're too busy talking about whether or not Joe Biden has on athletic shoes today instead of focusing on the resources that are flowing into our community in a historic rate.
Yeah.
One like we have never seen before. I will go to my grave saying that Joe Biden has been one of the most historic and transformative presidents of my lifetime.
Yeah.
And it's not exaggerations. It's just looking at the numbers.
That's exactly right. I'm a data guy, and I couldn't agree more. And so, hey, this is James Gailliard. You're listening to the James Gailliard Show. I am with Chairman Jamie Harrison of the Democratic National Committee. Listen, let me ask you this. Our show goes all the way to Raleigh, Durham, but we have a lot of rural listeners.
Yes.
I'm very passionate about three groups of communities, Jamie. One is the rural community. One is rural and one is black.
Yes.
And the third is faith.
Yep.
So I'm always trying to weave in those three communities. What would you say should be our strategy? What would you say to us about engaging rural voters? How do we do a better job of shrinking that rural-urban divide and making sure rural voters really understand the value of this election and why they should be voting for President Joe Biden?
You know, one of the things that has bothered me in politics, and I've been doing this now since I was 16 years old, and it used to be that the Democratic Party was a party of rural America. Mm-hmm. We still are the sole party that delivers the most for rural America, but no longer do rural America look at members of those communities look at us as their party representing them. So we got to get back into those communities. I consider myself a dirt road Democrat. I grew up off of a dirt road. Okay. So I know about, being out in fields and getting different stuff. My grandma picked cotton. My grandfather worked at a dairy, for a little while. So that's the stock that I come from. So I understand that rural life. It's important for them to understand that they got people fighting for them every day. Just that broadband issue alone is going to be big for rural America. Because right now, the president talks about it. When you got to take your kids to a McDonald's and sit in the parking lot so they can do their homework because there's no connection. And what COVID showed us was how rural communities lack the infrastructure. Many of our rural hospitals have closed because of the lack of Medicaid expansion, but also the lack of infrastructure, because telehealth is so important. But you can't do telehealth if you're not connected, right? So it's important that we not cede any territory to Republicans, that we go into rural communities so that they understand the things that we have done in order to improve their lives. The investments that we have made in terms of farming, the investments that we've made in terms of creating new economies, putting infrastructure in the ground. So many of I'm from South Carolina. So many of our rural mayors told me that, Jamie, our infrastructure is falling apart. It's 60, 70, 80 years old. Pipes are breaking down and everything else, and we need that investment. Well, they are getting that investment from Joe Biden. Again, over 500 projects that are on the way. Roads, bridges, water pipes, internet here in North Carolina. That is only because of one reason, right? Two reasons. One, 80 million of us, including a lot of people here in North Carolina, went to the polls in 2020
Right.
and cast a ballot for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Right.
And two, so that was they made a promise to us that they were going to change things and do things, but they kept that promise once they got there. And they put over $1 trillion into the infrastructure in this nation. And they made sure that particularly in black communities and communities that have been historically left out, that there's set-asides, there are programs that are specifically targeted to those communities that have been left out of the investments in infrastructure. That is because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Now, folks, as the president says it often, we just need to finish the job.
That's right.
There's still more to do. We're not saying that everything's done, everything's perfect. We got to finish the job, but we also need help. We need to make sure that, Congressman Davis is sent back to Congress. We need to make sure that we win the governorship here in North Carolina. Right. We need to make sure that we have Democrats in control of the Senate and the House. We need to break up what's going on in the legislature here in North Carolina so that you bring some sanity back and that the governor actually has some people who can work with.
That's right.
And so that's what's all at stake. And the power to do all of that, voters have it.
That's it.
Right?
Yeah, yes, that's it.
It's no magical thing. Voters have it.
That's exactly
Either
right.
we use it or we don't.
That's right.
One of the things that Dr. King said that lives with me, this is a quote from a letter from a Birmingham jail. He said, "We will repent not merely for the hateful words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people."
That's right.
And when we sit on our hands and not go vote, that is being silent. That is not speaking with the most powerful tool that we have, and that is our right to vote.
That's right.
And so it's important that we don't be silent, that we stand up, that we stick up for the things that we believe in, and that we invest and vote for folks who actually think about us, who actually are working and fighting for us.
That's right.
And I can tell you, every morning when Joe Biden gets up, he's thinking about how to make life better for all of America. Every day when Donald Trump gets up, he thinks about the retribution and payback that he's going to give to people he considers political enemies. That is what this contest is all about. Hope versus fear, progress versus chaos. And we got to determine where we want to go.
Man, look, I'm a pastor, so I'm ready to lift an offering. I'm going to say amen to everything you say and lift an offering. So before I let you go, Chairman, personalize this a little bit for just our listeners. Tell us, the Jamie Harrison that's in front of me right now, who were the people, who was the person that really influenced you? Who are the people that influence you around public service, around the man you are, around the character you have? Just tell us about that.
Well, every election season, I think back to my grandfather. So my mom was a teen when she had me. She was 16 years old, dropped out of school. And my grandparents, my grandfather and my grandmother, really took care of me. My grandfather had a 4th grade education, and he, like I said, he worked at a dairy for a while. He paved roads. My grandmother had an 8th grade education. She picked cotton and she cleaned houses. And so one of the traditions that my grandfather and I established when I turned 18 was that we would go vote together. One of the last things that I did with my grandfather before he passed away in 2004 was actually vote. That was the year in which I graduated from law school, came back home to South Carolina to help run a Senate race. My grandfathers and my grandparents were living in a neighborhood that had a lot of crime, and so I actually bought them a house. My grandfather was a diabetic at the time. He had amputations, and so he was in a wheelchair. And so I went to their new house, drove up, picked him up, got him in the car. We went and voted, and then we came back home and sat out on the porch. That's his thing. He loved to sit on that porch. And I remember sitting there, and he said to me, he grabbed my arm and said, "Baldy." So that, we got nicknames in the South.
Right.
And I tell anybody, he was the only one that could call me Baldy. But he said, "Baldy, you know what we did today?" And I said, "Yes, sir, we went to vote." And he said, "Yep." He said, "Son, I couldn't always vote." I said, "Yes, sir, I know." He said, "In this state, they didn't always consider me a whole man." I said, "Yes, sir, I know that too." He said, "Let me tell you something, son. You never let anybody tell you that you don't matter. You never let anybody tell you you don't count." And that has lived with me all of my life, because so many people, like my grandparents, feel as though society is saying that they don't matter, that they don't count. And it's always been my job to stand up and be a voice for folks like that. People who will be seen as simple and not having a lot of value by larger society, but are so strong and so valuable in terms of the things that they represent and who they are. And so my grandparents made me into the man that I am.
Wow.
And when I go all across this country, we just went from South Carolina to D.C. to Alaska to Nevada to Chicago, and now we're here in North Carolina. The reason why I do that is not because of the money, it's not because of the fame, but it's because I think about people like my grandparents that are in all of these communities who are looking for folks to represent them. Joe Biden's fighting for those people. I know Donald Trump is not. And so I'm going to be in the president's corner because he's always been in our corner. And he's always standing up for people like my grandparents. And that's why I'm standing up for him.
Family, this has been a great interview with Chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Jamie Harrison. You're listening to the James Gailliard Show, and he just told you exactly why we need to reelect Joseph Biden and Kamala Harris, and why we need to elect Democrats up and down the ballot here in North Carolina. Commissioner, so much. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you, Pastor.
And thank you for being in North Carolina.
I appreciate it. And listen, I'm coming back a lot. Y'all's barbecue is good. Not South Carolina, but it's still good.
We're going to talk about that on another show. We'll be right back. We're going to go pay some bills.
Thank you, Pastor.
On Choice FM.
Hey, Choice FM family, we're on the line live with Cousin Kira. AskCousinKira.com or 919-275-5372. Kira, how we doing?
You know, we're doing really good today.
I love to hear it. Love to hear it. Now, Kira, when people are reaching out to you to go ahead and get behind the wheel of a brand new or used automobile, we sometimes like to think that we're stepping into a car dealership with good faith, but that's not always the case. Can you tell me a story of something bad that happened with an experience or someone trying to buy an automobile?
Yes, I actually had a customer, and they had the best approval through the credit union, so they got a single-digit rate. But when they went out and bought a car, they picked wrong. And when I mean they picked wrong, they have a $7,000 hole of what that car is not worth, and now it's time to buy something else, and it's just going to keep following him until he pays it off. So when I say call me first, it's to keep people from wasting money and understanding what that purchase looks like in the future, not just that day.
We love to hear it, and thank the Lord that we have people like Cousin Kira on our team. Ladies and gents, be sure to hit her up ASAP. That's 919-ASK-KIRA, 919-275-5372, or www.askcousinkira.com.
Pop's Diner, 132 South Church Street, Rocky Mount. Juicy burger, hot, delicious wing, yummy spaghetti, and the first pizza to ever be served downtown Rocky Mount. Hot, delicious pizza and more at Pop's Diner. Pop's Diner for hot dogs. Pop's Diner for lunch. Open daily from 11 till 7 p.m. City workers get the Pop's hookup. Pop's Diner. Open from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Wings, pizza, burgers, spaghetti, salads, and more. Hot, fresh, and fast at Pop's downtown Rocky Mount. Open 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday.
AURN News.
I'm Jamie Jackson. Former President Donald Trump had this to say after he was found guilty.
Now, I'm under a gag order, which nobody's ever been under. No presidential candidate's ever been under a gag order before. I'm under a gag order, nasty gag order, by a man that can't put two sentences together, given by a court, and they are in total conjunction with the White House and the DOJ, just so you understand. This is all done by Biden and his people, and this is done by Washington, and nobody's ever seen anything like it. So we have a judge who's highly conflicted. You know what the confliction is. Nobody wants to write about it, and I'm not allowed to talk about it. If I do, he said, I get put in jail. So we'll play that game a little bit longer. We won't talk about it, but you're allowed to talk about it. I hope you do, because there's never been anybody so conflicted as this.
The former president scheduled to be sentenced on July 11th, just days away from the RNC convention. For AURN News, I'm Jamie Jackson.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
Family, welcome back. I'm James Gailliard, and this is the James Gailliard Show. I was laughing out loud. If you know me, you'll know that I don't laugh out loud often. It has to be really, really funny. As my daddy would have said when I was growing up, whenever there was a reference to something funny, he would immediately respond and say funny ha ha or funny peculiar. He was just kind of funny like that. But this was funny ha ha for me. I want us to be critical thinkers. I want us to pay attention very carefully to what people say. In that news segment, former President Donald Trump said, no presidential candidate has ever been given a gag order. And our response should immediately be, no presidential candidate has ever been convicted of a felony, sir. So you wind up in an elite group because you do what you do. And so we've spent the whole show talking about Donald J. Trump, his conviction on his counts, but really the deeper implications of the criminal justice system. And there's been some data that's coming out, and this is the data as a result of all this, and this started at the top of the show. 22% supposedly of black people will vote for Trump because of our ability. Listen to how racist this is. Because of our ability to be able to identify with the criminal justice system. And I think the reason I say it's racist because I've given you all the data on how unjust the system is. But this is not an apples to apples comparison. I think it's also interesting the data says 10% of Republican Republican registered voters say they are less likely to vote for Donald Trump following the felony conviction. So 10% have fallen off, according to this poll. And then, and so we'll see what happens, but I wanted to lift that up. I wanted to raise that up. I wanted to raise up the significant inequities of our criminal justice system. And we brought on the interview, Jamie Harrison today, who's the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, because I wanted you to hear firsthand of the significant, so that you as my audience knows when people say, well, Biden hasn't done anything for the black community. I think he has done a great job, Jamie Harrison, that is, to lay out for us all the things that have been done that are significant in the black community. So I hope you'll share this. I hope you'll give us additional information and anything that you want me talking about. Thank you for that comment, Michael, about loving the interview. Our vote is the weapon on the battlefield of North Carolina. You are right. I want to say this. And so thank you for that, Avis. I want to say that many of you have chimed in today saying that it's, the way the way our criminal justice systems work is not fair. Systems that create systems of marginalization, which you're right. How sad the statistics are, the realness of the statistic. Here's the deal. We change it all with voting. And this is the reason why we must vote. We change it all when we vote. And so this entire summer, I want us parroting and championing and talking about the significance of our vote. I want us starting to recognize that we won't just listen to the rhetoric of people that are operating in emotion, but instead we're going to lay out real data. I laid out for you real data today on how unjust our criminal justice system is. I've laid out real data for you on why a convicted felon can run for president. I've laid out real data for you why he's unlikely to lose his right to vote. Let me lay a few more things out and we'll be done because I'm about to be out of time. But so that we understand the deeper implications of the criminal justice system. 2 million people are put in prisons every year or jails every year. 2 million people. I want you to hear that. 2 million people are placed in jails every year with mental illness issues, mental health issues. 30% of every woman that is placed in a jail has a mental health diagnosis, and 15% of every man. So, and 65% have some kind of substance abuse disorder. So this is where we'll land today on this show, and I hope you'll share this, and I love y'all. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. And I've got huge growing audiences on YouTube and Facebook and, of course, on Choice 92.1 FM. This is where we're going to land today's criminal justice plane. We're going to land the plane by understanding this. We are arresting people and we are incarcerating people, rather, sometimes because they are poor. So we have criminalized poverty. We have criminalized mental illness. And we have criminalized substance abuse disorder. That's why we need to vote, because being poor is not a crime. Having a drug problem is not a crime. And having an emotional or mental illness is not a crime. And we have blocks of people in the North Carolina General Assembly, in both the State House and in the Senate, who do believe it's a crime. We see it in the state Supreme Court with Justice Newby, and I'll talk about that on another show. And so if you believe with me that it is not a crime to be poor, it is not a crime to have grown up in a family where someone in your family was a criminal, it is not a crime to have a substance abuse disorder, and it's not a crime to have a mental illness disorder or diagnosis. If you believe with me that those things are not a crime, I want you to share all the content of this show, and I want you to make sure you vote, and I want you to make sure you encourage your entire sphere of influence to vote. I'm James Gailliard. This is the James Gailliard Show. You've been watching and listening on Choice 92.1 FM. I'm out of clock, but I'm not out of content. I'm out of time, but I'm not out of talk. I'll see you next Monday. Peace and love and all the great things wishing to you and your family.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
This is
WRSV, Elm City.
Turn Up.
Choice FM.